Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's live session. We are going to start in a few minutes, so let's just wait for more people to join the live session. Remember, guys, that Chhavi will be taking questions from the live chat, so make sure you're constantly asking questions. Let's wait for another 2 more minutes for more people to join, and we'll begin the session. All right, let's begin now. So, hi everyone. This is another TopCast live session. TopCast is a brand new initiative by the CTwT team of Unacademy, and we are super glad to have Chhavi Gupta with us today. We are going to be going over the CAT exam together and kind of break down some great, strategies, kind of help you guys. And the two subjects that we're going to be doing today are Quant and verbal ability and reading comprehension. So I hope you guys can give a quick little applause in the chat section for Chhavi Gupta. Hi, Chhavi.
Hey, hi
How are you
Melissa.
doing?
I'm good. How are
Good
you?
evening to you.
Good evening.
Okay. So Chhavi, how and when did you write your exam for the CAT?
So I wrote my CAT exam in 2017 and hence I joined my MBA in 2018.
Very nice. And where did you do your MBA?
I did my MBA at IIM Ahmedabad. I was in the 2018-2020 batch.
Exciting. And how was your experience in the IIM Ahmedabad?
Yeah, I think it was sort of almost everything that I expected and actually more. I think I got all the knowledge that I had expected out of an MBA. I got a lot of experience, a lot of exposure, and it was just an amazing journey. I think those 2 years just were like really precious. We learned a lot, experienced a lot, and just I think grew as a person also.
I think college has a wonderful way of changing us as people. I
Yeah.
think just being able to be surrounded by other people your age and everyone's kind of studying the same thing. So there's like such a nice bonding happening. All right. Without further ado, let's kind of get into the two subjects that you have planned for us today. So I believe we're starting with quantitative ability.
Yeah, we are.
All
Yes,
right.
so I think, in the past few years, since I have been speaking to a lot of people, I know that quantitative ability ends up being like one section where people get really afraid, at least towards the end, that we are not able to, solve so many questions. We are not able to complete the entire section and a lot more queries, right? So today I will sort of want to take everyone through, what you should be doing in your last 10 days. And yeah, that is from my experience and from everyone that I have basically spoken to. So there are, I think, one major thing that I would like to say is that there are plenty of topics in the quant exam, right? And you would feel like the syllabus is so vast, it's really tough to actually cover everything or revise everything. But I would say that just do topics that you have prepared for once, but are not still fully confident in. So you can just, revise those topics, do more questions around that, just try to see whether you can up your overall score in the topics that you're not very very good at. That said, in this last 10 days, do not just do new questions. I would say that give like 50% of time to new questions and 50% of time to old questions that you have already done. And that is essentially really important, because the questions that you have already done, if you do those questions and if you get them correct, it just gives that motivation that, okay, where I was earlier, I'm actually in a better place since that time. And that boosts your motivation. That also tells you that you have learned a lot. And if you are still not able to do those questions, that's okay. You should try to redo those questions. The aim for doing all these questions, all this practice, is essentially that at the end of this practice, you should be able to solve all the questions that you have ever solved till date. If you are able to do that, I think you're pretty sorted for the CAT exam.
Okay, Chhavi, let's talk about some specific, perhaps, topics in Quant. Do you think there are specific topics that are more important than others that people should definitely be looking into?
I think topics, broader topics in general, I would say like, algebra, geometry are things that people should be looking to. I, for one, remember that I had spent a lot of time in number theory, for which like questions are really less, but I just did not feel very confident about it. So I had spent a little bit of, quite a bit of time there. So I think just pick up the topics which are a little broad, which you are still not fully confident in. And I think those topics, if you cover, obviously there's no like one recipe for everyone, but if those topics you can cover, that should be good enough.
And do you think that, you know, of course, there, I don't know if in Quant it's a very tough exam and it's a very tough exam to finish because
Yeah.
a lot of people end up saying that time management is a problem. What is your strategy for that? Do you think there is something that people can do so that they're able to complete the entire paper?
Yeah, I think in general, CAT exam is one side aptitude and one side time management. Time management is required in all the different sections and everything. And I think it is of essence that people know how to solve problems with a timer always. So that said, I hope you're solving all of your questions with a timer in front of you. You're doing either timed sectionals, timed mocks, or even practice questions you should solve with a timer. That said, I think in Quant specifically, there are few strategies by which you can attempt. So these are the different strategies that I've come to see in people, the way people do these sections. So one is that do it in one run. Start with the first question, end with the last question. Spend at max 2.5 minutes per question, and that should be more than sufficient. If you're not able to do the question in that prescribed time, just move on to the next question. And in the end, if you have time left, you can come back to the questions that you have not solved. So this is just one very linear strategy. The other strategy that people actually follow is that they just start solving a question if they feel that by reading the question and they are able to solve it in like less than 1 minute, they solve it. Otherwise, they leave it and move on to the next. The reason why people follow this strategy is they want to ensure that they don't ever leave an easy question because of lack of time. So they don't ever want to leave a question that they could have solved, but they are not able to solve because they spend time in some other question. So this is another strategy, and then they come back and solve, like go through another rev of the entire paper. The third strategy is that you sort of time yourself in the paper, you sort of time yourself midway. So for the first 20 minutes, you do the first half questions, and for the next 20 minutes, you do the next half questions. That way, what happens is that when people do the paper linearly, it happens that last 5-6 questions are almost those questions which people are not even able to see. And it is highly likely that those questions were easy. So to just avoid all of this, they sort of break it into two and solve the first half of questions in first 20 minutes and the next half in the next 20 minutes. So these are the different strategies that are there. Once you know these strategies, the most important element of it is that you figure out your own strategy. Like there are so many different strategies, and you will hear different things from different people that this is right or that is right. I personally believe that you should figure out what strategy is right for you. And once you have tried all of these different types of strategies, then you should just fixate on one and just use that one for the remaining days, for the remaining mocks, and use the same one in your final day as well. Do not try to experiment with very, very new strategies towards the end.
I think that's absolutely correct. I think a mistake I probably assume that, students tend to do is that they get very nervous as we come closer towards the exam, and then they forget the initial strategy that they have because they're listening to so many different people. So they
Yeah.
just pick up on, these very last minute strategies, and then their last week is a havoc. Do you think that students should avoid doing that, like avoid listening to anything that is different from what they have been, kind of working on already for like the past month, say in their preparation? In the last week, should they just avoid listening to new strategies?
Well, I think yes, the last 10 days is sort of, it's really delicate that if you sort of lose your strategy, it becomes very difficult. But that said, if someone is not convinced with the strategy that they have been following, or they have not, they just fixed their strategy like 3 days back or something, they should at least try solving 2 to 3 mocks with one particular type of strategy. And then whichever suits best, they should just solve the remaining and the final exam with that strategy. What is important now is that now is high time that you fix one strategy, and then of course avoid listening to like there can be 100 strategies of doing any particular thing, so avoid listening to those.
And do you think, of course, we all make blunders and mistakes when we're very hassled. And as the exam comes closer, I'm sure, or like, we are bound to make mistakes. Do you think there are a couple of silly mistakes that we should be aware of, that we should try? If we're aware of it, we can do our best to avoid making them. Do you think there's something like that we can apply for the quant subject?
Definitely they are. So there are two types of mistakes that you can make at this time. One is like, you are getting really anxious, you have that exam anxiety, that pressure, and you are making mistakes because of that. And that also includes like the timer pressure if you have not been practicing with the timer. The second type is like genuine silly mistakes, which we make even if it is not a very, very timed exam, right? So let me talk about both of them. The first one being the timer pressure, the exam pressure, and all. The way to go about it is becoming more and more confident in your topics, becoming more and more confident in that, yes, I can solve this particular thing in this particular time. And I have done it a few times already. And this is why I really pay high emphasis on giving mock tests and sectional tests. Because if you give those, then you are confident that, okay, I have done this earlier and it is not something new that is coming to me. So that is why it is really important to keep on practicing and solve things with timer. Please, guys, if you're not doing that, do that. The second one is making like those genuine silly mistakes. And I was actually one person who did that a lot. And my quant accuracy was below 90%. And ideally, it should not be. If I'm attempting a question, it should be mostly correct. The accuracy should be like 95 at least. So my quant accuracy was low. It was just because I wanted to solve all the questions, and I would generally, towards the end, make a silly mistake. Now, the way that I solved it was that I started spending like 5 seconds extra to individual questions, just looking at that particular question, looking at the options, looking at what I have solved, looking at all of the numbers, and then marking the option. Trust me, it took my accuracy from like below 90 to above 95. So that is the other type of silly mistakes that people do. So ensure that you are practiced enough and confident enough to avoid the exam panic, and you are taking enough time in your individual questions and have enough attention and focus towards your questions so that you're not making the genuine silly mistakes also.
Makes sense, makes sense. So I think the last question that I want to ask you related to quant before we move on to VRC is,
Mhm.
what are your views on the formula sheets?
Well, I for one had created my own formula sheet, and I recommend people do that. It is very easy to like download a formula sheet from somewhere, and it is obviously good to take inspiration and to ensure that you are, covering everything in general. So do that, but have your own formula sheet so that you know what are the formulae you forget, what are the formulae you can mark them, you can do other things with them, you can segregate them in different manners, and so on. In case you want inspiration, I'm sure there are like many formula sheet out there, and you can take that. If you have not created your formula sheet yet, it's good to take one which is already there. Just ensure that it is comprehensive. Check in the questions that you're getting wrong whether the formula is already there in your formula sheet or not. If it is not, then you should add it. And towards the end, it becomes very, very easy for you to revise using that particular formula sheet, because you can just open that, just read it through in the morning, read it through before night, so that those formula get embedded in your head.
Okay, I think that was a very great, insight into quant. Let's quickly move into verbal ability and reading comprehension. So, what do you think a student should ideally be doing in the last 10 days with regard to this subject?
I think for VARC specifically, you have to just practice. Like, that is the only thing you can do once you are like thorough with English in general, and you know what are the types templates of RCs that come, what are the VA questions that come. All you can do is practice. There, I mean, I personally can say that I was not fully confident when I went into the CAT exam. No one can be fully confident in this section, because RCs can be from anywhere, the questions can be from anywhere, it can be very difficult, very easy, and a lot more things. So the only thing that you can do at this time is obviously practice. The second thing is, again, similar to Quant, create your strategy. Create how will you attempt this particular section. Will you do VA questions first? Will you do RC question first? What amount of time will you allocate to each of these two type of questions, and so on. So I think that is one thing that you should try to fix on. And yeah.
Okay. And of course, I know that the reading comprehension takes quite a bit of time, right? You have to read through the entire thing. Do you think there's a particular strategy that you can apply so that you aren't wasting a lot of time on the reading comprehension? Or do you think there are just some moments where you should just leave a particular reading comprehension and move on?
Yeah, I think that every individual should try to define what is the time, what is my time per RC. So, for example, for me, for say 3-question RC, I would take 5 minutes. For a 6-question RC, I would take 10 minutes. That is reading the passage and solving the questions. So, similarly, you should try to define what is your ideal time where your accuracy does not, suffer a lot. So, what is your ideal time for solving that particular and a particular RC? Once you are, beyond that time, then I think just spending a lot of time in individual questions of that RC is not advisable. So, for example, if it is a 5-question RC and you have solved 4 questions, but the last question is just very difficult, or you just cannot get it, and you're finding it difficult, you're spending more and more time. At that time, just ask yourself, is this worth my time, this one question, or should I solve another RC with 5 questions, right? So that is one critical decision point that you should take. Another way of figuring out when to leave an RC is that if in the initial 1 or 2 paragraphs you don't get the head and tail of that passage, if you're not able to understand anything, it's okay to leave that passage and move on. You can always come back. Like, people sometimes feel that leaving a question and moving ahead is like actually not attempting anything, but it is not that. It is just that when you are attempting things for the first time, it's okay to leave things which you are not sure you will be able to do, move on to things which you are more confident about, do those, and then come back, because you will have time left, right? So at that time you will be more confident because you have already solved a few questions, and you will ensure that you're not missing out on any easy questions that are there. So anywhere where you feel that, after 1 or 2 passages you're not able to understand it at all, just let it be, move on to the other one, and later on you can come back.
Okay, I just want to ask you a couple of questions that are not necessarily related to the CAT exam that's coming up, but related to you. Do you
Right.
think that, I know that like there's a very student-like feel the night before the exam. What is something that you used to do that would calm you down before the exam?
um I don't know. I think one thing that I really liked was I wanted my day to be very scheduled and planned in advance. And I think that I was doing that a lot during CAT. I knew my slot was morning slot. And in the initial 5-6 months of my preparation, I had always given exams towards the night. And my scores were good. But the first time I gave exam in the morning slot, I actually scored like the least that I have scored during all of my mock tests. So that sort of, I became a little afraid. I was like, oh my God, I might not be able to do it in this particular slot. So what I started to do in the last 10 days, and actually in the last 7 days, what I did was I woke up at the exact same time I would have to wake up to go to the exam center. I got ready at the same time. I ensured that I do not eat anything, drink anything, and do nothing which is not allowed in the CAT exam. And then I would give the mock test at the same time. Once I was through this on the final day, I was not worried. Because earlier I was a little worried, what if I'm thirsty, what if I have to do something, what if I just want to get up, or what if I'm just not as concentrated enough in the morning. But I was fine in the final day because I actually followed this entire routine. Obviously I made like my family a little miserable by waking up really early and asking them to prepare breakfast beforehand and all of that. But that was just one assurance that I needed, so that I was sure that I was at my full capacity on the exam day.
Yeah, I think disturbing your family in the last 7 days is okay when you've given months of your own time for preparation, right? So it's just the final leg where you have to put everything out on the table just so that you can get all those months of hard work in return.
Yeah.
So yours currently, you were in IIM Ahmedabad. Now this year's paper is going to be given by them. Do you have any, like, how do you feel about that, considering, you were in that, you were right there?
Yeah, I'm sure that all of the IIMs have some sort of standard of setting the paper. And it's surprising that the number of questions that I get sometimes, I'm Ahmedabad is setting the paper. What do you think it'll be? I'm like, no one has an idea. And it is not that because one particular institute is setting it is going to be a certain way. They can always be like different speculations and things. But I think at this time, it's best that you just focus on your preparation, everyone. And yes, it is being said by, Ahmedabad, but I don't think I can say anything about the paper.
Of course. Okay. Do you have any last words that you would like to tell our aspirants, our audience watching, related to Quant and VAC? Because the exam is just 10 minutes, I mean 10 days away, and it's the final leg. This is all the time that they have to pull whatever tricks out of the hat, right? So do you have any last advice to give them?
I think this could be like a very cliche advice, but all you can do at this time, guys, is practice. Wherever you are, whatever level you are at, all you can do is practice and ensure that you give your best on the final day. On the final day, as I talked about, one thing is your content, one thing is how much you know, how much your knowledge is, and the second is ensuring that your mind is actually at its best capacity. So ensure that you do that, ensure you're giving your mocks at the appropriate time, ensure that your sleep cycle is right. Just ensure everything. Every time you're giving mocks, ensure you don't have your books around, you just have like blank sheets of paper and you're solving on that. Try to replicate your cat exam as much as possible, and it will become easier and easier for you. So that is, I think, mostly that. Do not solve a lot of new questions because you might feel a little demotivated here and there. And trust me, I had that scene like 7 days before my CAT exam, but I had to just pack up and just continue practicing. So it is possible. It is okay to feel a little demotivated. It is okay to feel a little stressed out. It is okay to feel a little bit of pressure. But I think our brain works best when there's slightly some amount of pressure, so that we are not overconfident, but also not as much that we get demotivated. So just assure that you reach that brain power, that brain states, and I think you'll do fine.
Okay. And do you think there's a specific amount of mock tests that you should attempt, or the number of question papers from the prior years that you should attempt? Is there like a golden rule or a fixed balance that you should try to strive for?
Well, during the overall preparation, I generally recommend people solve like one mock test or two mock tests a week. Given that this is the last 10 days, I would say do not solve like more than 4 or 5 in the last 10 days. I would strongly recommend you not solve any mock test on the day prior to the exam, because that mock score generally does a lot of things to how you're feeling, how motivated you are. So don't do that. Apart from that, don't try to also just put a lot of mock tests in this particular time, even if you have not solved many earlier. Just doing like a decent amount, 5 to 6 maybe at max mock tests will do at this time. And do not try to pressurize yourself that I've not done, or compare with your peers that they have done 80, I've done 50. That all is okay.
All right. So let's go into the question and answer section of our session. We have a couple of questions here in our chat. We have Ashu Sharma asking, I scored very low in cat right now. Can I focus on OMATs now or stay on cat? I feel demotivated. What would you say?
See, I would say that even if you are scoring low in your mocks, your final exam is not over, right? You can still do those mocks. It is just about 10 days. You can do those mocks. You can just try to improve your score as much as possible and give the exam properly with your entire attention and entire effort. If you don't, you will always later on feel, what if I had done like more over at this time and I could have scored better. The other thing is OMATs also have very similar concepts and topics, if not type of questions. Type of questions are slightly different, but the concepts and topics are same. So might as well practice them in some other way during the CAT preparation. And it is, again, okay to feel demotivated. As I mentioned, everyone does in some way or the other, some pressure or the other. But as you give more and more tests, as you practice more, as you practice simulate your final CAT exam more, you will become more confident.
All right. We have a question from Nikhil Kapoor who asks, Ma'am, please help in reading of passage. So I presume he's just like for some tips for the comprehension. What do you say?
Um, okay, so I think that is like a little broad question at this point in time. I don't know in general how I can help with reading of passage. The way that I'll just give you an overall strategy of how, generally people improve their reading comprehensions is that they tend to read from many different sources, many different genres of reading, so that it is possible for them to feel confident whenever they are reading any particular topic, even if that topic is like something new to them. They are fine because they have read quite a few different genres. The second aspect of it is ensuring that you are able to focus and comprehend enough. One thing that I've seen happen with people is that when they read, they sort of zone out. Now, zoning out is something like, you are reading, but then you have to reread those sentences, reread that passage, right? And that is something that is not recommended. For that, again, it is practice. It is actually practice at that particular time, in that particular scenario where you will be giving that exam, and in front of a screen online, just exactly how you will be doing it. So that practice will ensure that you are getting distracted lesser and lesser, and you are focusing more on your comprehension. So I think that is something, once people have basic English knowledge, these are the two things that they can do to ensure that reading comprehension becomes better.
Right. We have another question from Anshul Thakur, and he asks me to ask you about the percentile required for getting admission in the FABM program of IIMA.
Um, so these are the questions that I would really recommend people to stay away from at this moment. You do not have your percentile right now. You have not even written your CAT exam. So just focus on getting the best percentile possible for your CAT exam. Once you have the result, once you have the percentile, then you will automatically get shortlists, right? Now, suppose that FABM, cutoff is like 95 percentile. If I tell you today that, okay, 95 percentile is what is required, will you just go and attempt the exam as if you want to get 95 percentile only? You should always attempt your exam as if you want 100 percentile. So I will not give answer to these questions. These are the questions that you should not even think of. Please, these are just last 10 days. Try to focus last 10 days on your CAT exam, give your exam to the best, and the rest can be handled and taken care of later.
I agree, completely agree. Okay, we have another question by Nisat Parmar. He asks how to maintain consistency and avoid negativity. And he says before his exam, he gets a little depressed. How to deal with it?
So, first of all, know that you are not alone. Everyone feels that. Everyone feels some sort of exam pressure. There are people who cope with it. There are people who are not able to, who just feel confident on the final day and so on. So, everyone feels that. That's okay. The only thing that you can do is stop thinking about the questions that were asked before this, right? What is the percentile required? With my academics, will I be able to get into this college or that college? Is my preparation enough? Stop asking these questions to yourself. Just focus on your preparation and know what is your aim when you're going in. Your aim is that you will do the best that you can do, and that's it. If you complete that aim, then you're successful over there. Okay, so just try to increase what you know in these last few days. and then perform as best as you can in that exam. Everyone is anxious, everyone is, very, very nervous, everyone has that pressure, and it is completely fine. Having a little bit of pressure ensures that you are not overconfident. So that's okay. Good luck for the exam.
Okay. We have another question from Kataria. And she says, Ma'am, my exam will be in 2022 and my English is not that good. Any tips on how can I improve?
Okay. So yes, I think the first thing that you need for VARC specifically is that your English needs to be good. As I mentioned, if your basics of English are clear, then you can actually move forward and increase your marks. If it is not, it is highly advised to try to learn English. Now, in case you get the chance, by the way, I had posted like a video about it on my channel, and the link, I guess, Malasa, would be there in description. So I had posted this video around 2 weeks back about how to go about basics for CAT 22 or 23. But I'll tell you very quickly what to do for English is ensure that you are reading a lot. Start reading basic novels, just build up the grammar, start reading, start writing. When you try to consolidate your thoughts and write it in another language, it automatically tells you what are the words you don't know, what are the phrases you don't know. Try to communicate in English, like verbal communication, talk to someone, listen to someone, do these things in English. Find a particular group who can help you learn English, either do it with your family members, friends, or whoever. And the last thing is actually listening. Just listen to podcasts, watch movies without subtitles, and all of those things. So that slowly, gradually, you have enough time. You can spend easily 2-3 months just focusing on learning English. And once you are there, then it will be easy enough for you to improve your scores.
Okay. We have a question from Abhinav Vanimesh, and he asks, how do you be consistent during preparation and how do you manage your time during preparation?
So I think two bits of this question. One is like initial planning. Okay. Managing time is sort of falls in initial planning. Initial planning means you know what all are the different constraints that you have in your particular day when you will be preparing. Okay. If you are in college, you should know what are my class schedules, sort of, not like very exact timings, but sort of how many hours I will need in classes, how many hours I'll need for XYZ and all of these things, and then how many hours I'll be able to devote to the preparation in general. This also includes planning long term. That is knowing when my college exams will happen. I will probably have to give 1 week of preparation for my college exams, and this time I won't be able to prepare for CAT. So knowing all of this, plan beforehand how much time you will need for the different activities that you have to do on every single day basis or before your CAT exam, and then accordingly schedule your time for your CAT prep. The second question is about consistency. Now, consistency is a really broad question. Frankly, it's not very, very easy to just get consistent in like, 1 or 2 tips. But the few things that you can do is try to maintain a streak for yourself in anything. So even if, you are preparing for CAT continuously, one day you do not find enough time, just spend half an hour, just spend like 40 minutes, do one sectional test. If you do that every single day, your brain knows that this is one activity that I have to do, and you automatically are a little bit more consistent. The other thing to do is finding a partner or pair up with someone. If you know someone else, your friend, etc., who's preparing, you should motivate them and they should motivate you. And what happens in this is that if you are missing out, then they will actually tell you that they did this, and then you will actually feel that FOMO in a good way, and you will do this thing and you will consistently do it. The other few factors which help you being consistent is actually tracking your performance, tracking what your mock scores are, seeing that you're going up or seeing your weaknesses, trying to improve on that. And some things could be external, like, joining like classes for preparation or just having a group study or something like that.
All right. We have a very interesting question from Shubham Saigal. And he says, Ma'am, I'm currently about 10 to 11 questions correct in my QA section. Same in VARC. Is it still possible to reach 15 plus in both sections, as I tried for the past month to cross this, but wasn't able to?
Okay. So, Shivam, I cannot obviously foresee for you whether that number is possible or not. But one thing that is possible is that you can for sure try to improve your score during these last 10 days. It's not the final day. If you have been consistently scoring, getting 10 to 11 right, that means that that is something that you can for sure get. Now, what you have to do is just try to push yourself a little more, maybe do more sectionals, maybe figure out if there are any particular topics where you're getting this wrong, and it is easier to do in quant. So figure out those topics that you're getting really wrong again and again. Do those topics, go back, revise that formula sheet for that particular topic, and do more of those questions. In general, what works for me is that if I find any particular topic or any particular type of questions, I do like 50 or 50 questions around that. And then you sort of get in the flow, you sort of know how to solve those questions. So find those topics out for yourself for quant, do that quickly. For VARC also, figure out whether you are attempting less or you are getting more incorrect, or it is happening more in VA, or it is happening more on RC. If once you find out the reason of why it is happening, then it is easier for you to reach the solution and to increase your score. Do not obviously feel like nothing can be done. There is enough time. Even right now, you can improve your score. So just think on that. Do not keep like a target in your mind that I want to do 15 or I want to do 20 or something. Just say that I want to improve as much as possible in these last days.
Okay, we have a question from Manish Kher, who asks you to give some revision strategy. Do you have any revision strategy tips to give?
Okay, so I think my revision strategy was mainly trying to do questions that I had previously done. For quant, what I did was that I was making silly mistakes and I knew that. So I picked up all of the mocks that I had given. I picked up the easy questions and I did them again, the ones that I got incorrect or I had to leave. I did them again. What that did was I sort of understood where I was, where I am today. I was making the same silly mistakes again and again sometimes. And that just made me realize that, okay, this is something I really need to focus on. And I took a step back, did that topic a little bit more, and tried to solve that. So that was my revision strategy. I did sort of like five questions from each topic in quant. But in the other sections, I did not actually do any particular topics. I just ensured that if my VA is, a little weak, I did a lot more questions there. For RCs also, I went back and did the questions that I was unable, like entire RCs where I was wrong. I actually resolved those RCs. So that was my essential revision strategy. In case you have given sufficient mocks, please go ahead and go back to old mocks, solve those questions that you were not able to solve a month or two back. And I think that is good enough revision.
Okay, I think the last question that we can take for today is from Shivam. And he says, ma'am, how to deal with DILR sets, which are not easy nor very difficult. Shivam, I'd like to answer this question by saying that we have a completely different session with Chhavi on the 23rd. So stay tuned because we will be talking exactly on that subject on that day, and probably be doing a longer Q&A session where we talk about all the last minute, things to keep in mind just before the D-Day. So do stay tuned for the 23rd live session with Chhavi. Um, yeah, I think that's all the questions. So the last thing I would like from you, Chhavi, is a motivational quote that you would like to let all of our audience know of.
Sure. I think one thing that I would like to tell all of you is that at this time it is very easy to, fall in trap of comparisons with your peers, with other things, even with yourself, that I was scoring better and what has happened suddenly and all. And what that does is sort of it just reduces your overall morale. I think that is one thing that you have to ensure that you need to keep up. Do not stop all of this comparison and everything. You are fine where you are. You have prepared for the exam. Have trust in yourself. Trust yourself that I have done enough. I have done a lot of questions. I have practiced a lot. I have put in my efforts for the preparation, and you will get the best possible score possible. So just give in your efforts for these last 10 days and you will be completely fine. Good luck for the exam, everyone, and for the last 10 days preparation.
Thank you so much, Chhavi, for your time. I think you have given us a great insight into the two topics that we took up today. And of course, I'm very excited to see you again for the 23rd, where we will be talking about the final topic and any D-Day trips and tricks to keep in mind. So again, thank you for, all these amazing tips. You have been super insightful. And we will see you on the 23rd session. All right. Thank you so much. Thank you to our audience who has been so kind and watching us all this while. I hope you enjoyed this session and I hope you come back for the 23rd session with more questions to ask because I am sure Chavi would love to answer them. And I think that's all. We can wrap this up. Thank you so much. And we will see you in the next Topcast live session. Bye bye.